Hey, I'm Jane Hogan, the Wellness Engineer, and today we're going to be talking with an expert in mindfulness, meditation, gratitude, and these are such beautiful topics that I know are everything to do with your health. People may not realize that, but it truly is. So, welcome to the podcast, Joree Rose.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here and look forward to it. I know it's going to be a beautiful conversation, hopefully, really inspiring and impacting your audience and listeners to know what we can do to stay healthy, mind, body, and soul.
Yes, it all goes together. I'm going to tell everyone a little bit about you, Joree. Uh, Joree Rose is a licensed marriage and family therapist, mindfulness and meditation teacher, life coach, author, speaker, and she leads mindfulness retreats around the world. Joree has helped thousands of people live happier and more fulfilling lives through living with greater awareness and compassion, allowing them to decrease their stress, anxiety, and shed unhealthy habits, patterns, and mindsets. Joree is the host of the podcast Journey Forward with Joree Rose and has authored a newly released A Year of Gratitude, Daily Moments of Reflection, Grace, and Thanks, as well as two mindfulness books, Squirmy Learns to Be Mindful and Mindfulness, It's Elementary. Joree has been featured in prominent media outlets such as oprahmag.com, nbcnews.com, Business Insider, KTLA News, and so many more. Joree, I'm just so thrilled to have you here. I don't think I've had someone that's like an expert in what you do. So you're a marriage and family therapist. How, I mean, you're kind of in that space, but how did you come to be really focusing in on meditation, mindfulness, gratitude? What's your
Uh,
story, Joree?
what's my story? So I often say I didn't seek mindfulness out. It really found me in many of the synchronistic moments that have impacted my life. Mindfulness appeared when I most needed it. And I
Mhm.
actually had never even heard what mindfulness was. So, the quick version of my story is I always knew I was going to be a marriage and family therapist, and yet also knew I wasn't going to fit in the mold of what typical therapists were for a variety of reasons. I could not tolerate that idea of this blank slate, this like invisible wall between me and another human. That's just not who I am at my core. And in California, where I live, you need 3,000 hours to become a licensed therapist. And I started that journey very young. And at 22, 23 years old, I thought, I have no business being anybody's therapist. I got halfway through my hours and I stopped. At that point, I had my daughters. I was fortunate enough to be in a position to be a stay at home mom, which is what I truly always wanted to do, especially in those early years. But by the time my second daughter was of school age and I was in my early 30s, I had this, what I call my one third life crisis, because I was too young for it to be midlife. So it was my one third, not my third one, but it was my one third life crisis of me waking up one day and really recognizing, how did I get here? Like,
Hmm.
I didn't remember making the conscious choices. All I did was what was next, what was next, what was next, what was next, because what was guiding me was creating safety and security, having come from a family of origin in which fear and anxiety is handed to me on a silver platter. So safety and security was my highest value, which prevented me from really any kind of self-exploration. I had married my high school sweetheart, who I had been with since I was 14 years old, met when I was 13, and did all the things logically and reasonably based of what was the next best choice. And by the time my youngest daughter was young, and I'd had my two girls, I always wanted two girls, had my girls, owned a home, like, now what?
Yeah.
And I thought, this is my life, and I don't even know who I am.
Mm.
And I got myself into therapy really for the first time in my life. And it was on that very first therapy session, I realized, oh, I really like being in this space. I want to go back to working on my hours, but I want to be on the other side of the couch, so to speak. So it had been about 8 or 9 years, been maybe not that long, maybe closer to 6 years, that I had been working on my hours since I reached out to my old supervisor. And I had always worked in schools working with kids because it was a really effective way to build hours quickly. And this was in January. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to wait till September till the school year starts again. synchronous moment occurred when I called her after not talking to her for a very long time. She had a school come on mid-year. She had an intern lined up for that position. The intern dropped out, and out of nowhere, I called. So 2 weeks later, I start this new counseling position. And I'm in her office one day for supervision, and I see a book on her bookshelf that says mindfulness. And I said, "What is that?" And she gave me a very vague description. I don't remember what she said, but she had an intern who was teaching mindfulness to kids in schools. So she connected me with this other intern. I said, "What is mindfulness? What are you doing?" She says, "Oh, I just got a training from this organization called Mindful Schools in the Bay Area." And I followed that path, and there was a class starting the following week. So all of the timing was just unfolding in front of me, and I trusted the path.
Yeah.
And I signed up for this 6-week course that I had to drive an hour each way to go to once a week. And the 6 weeks was an introduction to mindfulness class. And that first class, I was guided in a 10-minute meditation. And I literally, Jane, thought I was going to die. I had never sat in stillness and silence ever my whole life. And it was so uncomfortable. And I still didn't even know what mindfulness was, but I knew enough to keep coming back. And I was intrigued. And so through this organization, Mindful Schools, I finished this intro course. I went on to become certified to teach mindfulness to kids. And that was what my entire internship had become, of me going into the school. And then really finding other professional avenues to learn more, because I still wasn't quite sure what it was, but I knew I needed to practice it. And I ended up doing a 7-day long retreat with Jon Kabat-Zinn, who, for those who don't know, is like the grandfather of mindfulness in the Western world, who developed mindfulness-based stress reduction. And if I'm going to learn something, I want to go to the source. So I ended up having this 7-day long retreat in MBSR training, which was absolutely life-changing. And so I delved into mindfulness in a very dual purpose, very personal path, personal journey, because I had lived in my head my whole life. I, even on that MBSR retreat, recognized I thought my emotions, I didn't feel my emotions. That was huge. And everything I had done was based on my logic and reason. Like if it made sense, then that's how I made my choices, versus like understanding the messages in my body, tuning in. And even though I had inklings of that throughout my life, I was too afraid to access it for fear of, what if I have to listen to that? Then what?
Mm-hmm.
Because I, again, was seeking comfort, safety, and security. I had no room to question anything in my life. The more I practiced these tools, and I mean, I delved in. I ended up doing a 5-day long Buddhist silent meditation retreat, meditation for 16 hours a day for 5 days, no talking, no eye contact, no reading, no writing, full internal immersion. And my life began to change in the most amazing ways, where I became no longer afraid to get curious of what was going on in my gut check, in my heart center, allowing my thoughts to not be my truth, and to giving myself the opportunity to sit in that curiosity without fear.
Right.
And what that ended up looking like was recognizing I was really unhappy in my marriage. I was happy, but not fulfilled. Just because we had been together forever did not mean it was a reason to stay together forever. And ended up getting divorced and leaning into the unknown, which was like, I still amaze myself at the faith that I had and the blind trust of the not knowing, when I'd been with my husband since I was 13 years old. And we had kind of a perfect life. So it was a very existential crisis of, everything is good, but something is off in me. And how do I tune into and tap into who I am outside of my roles, my expectations, being guided by safety and security, and finding that authentic role in me.
Mm.
And so from my personal journey, completed my hours as a therapist, but then I also developed curriculum for mindfulness classes that I wish I could have taken, because I still I mean, John Kabat-Zinn was different, but I was looking for the ways to teach it in a way that others who were more like me, by that I mean busy, suburban, upper middle class, stay at home moms who are stressed as all get out, but might not be inclined to a meditation class because they don't have time for that. At the time, 10 plus years ago, this was for others, right? It was still very not integrated into more everyday secular society. Even my mindfulness, or even my 5-day silent meditation retreat I went on, I was the only mom who was there. At the end of that 5 days, they were saying, you know, oh, be sure to thank the people who fed your cat and who watered your plant. And I'm like, how about the 10 people I needed to manage to take care of my kids and micromanage their schedules and carpools for 5 days? Like, I wasn't represented in their audience.
Right.
And so I wanted to be a guide and a teacher and a face of mindfulness and meditation that spoke to me in a way that I could relate to. So I created the curriculum based on all my trainings and workshops and seminars and delving in that I wish I could have had, that made it really practical, because mindfulness and meditation can be very esoteric
Yeah.
and not make sense for, okay, but what do I do right now in this moment? Like, what does it actually mean? And how do I integrate it into my life? And also, how can I role model it to my kids or my partner in a way that I'm now shifting the culture of my home, that
Yeah.
we can live in a different way of being?
Oh my.
So there's so much more I could say about it, but that, I think that the nutshell version of, I did not seek it out. It really was multiple series of synchronistic events that I just kept following the pebbles,
Right.
because I think I had some inner knowing, I need this. I don't even know what it is, but I know that I need this and I need a lot more of it.
You know, I think so many people listening can probably relate to that, your story. Like, I feel like I can relate to it, that I was driven as well by safety and security, safety and security. My whole life, I realized that I was doing that, and also not like in my body at all. Just, and not even very often, I don't think, having conscious thoughts. Like, it was just very,
No.
very reactive. And maybe the people listening can understand that time in life when you're a working mom and you got kids, or even if you're not a working mom, you're just at a busy time in your life, and it seems like everyone else is calling your attention. Who has time for meditate? What is meditation anyway?
Well, and we live in a society and culture that glorifies busyness. And so it's easy
True.
to stay on autopilot, to go through the motions. And many people, this is not a judgment, it's just an observation and semi fact based on how many people I work with, stay busy for a reason, because they don't want to sit with perhaps what might come up, with the
Yeah.
thought of, oh crap, if I sit and I tune into myself, what do I do if I realize I'm unhappy? That's responsibility to do something with that information.
Yep.
And what if I
Can't.
don't want to have the impact of that? So I'll just keep staying busy so I don't have to pay attention to what's bubbling under the surface. But you push it under the rug, eventually you're going to trip over a pile in the rug. It's not going away.
Mhm. The
And
busyness
so,
the busyness is like, it's like an addiction, like any other addiction, right? It's just a socially acceptable addiction, compared to like drowning out your feelings with alcohol or drugs or whatever. But it's still a
yes,
behavior adaptation that allows us to not sit with the realness of who we are.
yeah,
I've never done one of those silent, days long retreats, and it's a dream of mine to do it. I should,
I
I
have,
want to do
I
that. You've
have to
inspired
say,
me.
I have to say, whenever I tell people I did that, their almost immediate response is, I could never do that.
Oh,
And let me tell you, whoever is listening, if I can do it, anyone can do it, because I started talking at a very young age and I haven't shut up since.
yeah,
it's a
that's a
it's a
challenge. Hey,
practice, but literally 16 hours a day.
I can't
It was
imagine.
intense. It was
But
intense. And
Yeah,
It
I
was
feel
amazing.
like we need to do this kind of thing where we challenge ourselves a little bit and learn. I mean, we're here to grow and learn, right? So if we stay busy all the time, if we never create that space, we can't really learn who we are. But the other thing I want to
No.
point out about your story is the synchronicities and how they just kept showing up right at the right time, right? So that shows you that you're on a path you're supposed to be on. So that was really beautiful.
And I didn't even tell you any of them. All of that I had them, but it was, when you ask the universe, give me signs, the
Yeah.
universe is going to give you plenty of signs. And I oftentimes oversubscribed or over attached to the sign versus recognizing this is the universe's way of just reminding me I'm on the right path. And
Hmm.
I had so many of those. I mean, I actually want to write a whole book on it because there were so many indicators that I was on the right path. And many people get those signs and dismiss it, again, afraid of where is this going to take me? Right. So there does require some internal trust in the unfolding. I don't know. And that's okay, because this is something I think really powerful for people to hear is, we have the known and we have the unknown. And it's a perception that the unknown is really scary because it's not known. And for me, who sought out safety and security, the unknown was like the worst of all enemies. It was like this big black abyss of fear and anxiety and dread. So I was really well protected and, defended against ever entering into that space. But this quandary of, okay, but I have the known and something's off.
Yeah.
I'm unaligned. I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled. So one of my mindset shifts was recognizing, oh, if I have the known and my perception is the known is good because that's what's predictable
Yeah.
and it's where I'm unhappy, well, then the only place that happiness actually resides is in the unknown. So it
Mm.
was a big mindset shift to recognize my need to rewire my perception of the unknown is actually awesome because I get to create that because I've been doing everything in my damn power to try to be happy in all the things that I have in front of me wasn't working.
Hmm.
And so that mindset shift was one of my really harbingers of change was recognizing I had to shift how I perceived what I otherwise thought was fear.
Yeah. And, I think the audience that listens to this podcast, mostly people that are in pain, pain is an even further down manifestation, I believe, of that not being fulfilled. Like it's kind of there's other messages. You got the messages kind of earlier on in that path, whereas I had to get all the way to pain before I got the
Yeah.
message that something had to change. So you talked there, Jory, about like mindfulness. A lot of people might think mindfulness meditation is the same thing. I know that you're going to tell us something different. So let's hear what's
Yes.
the difference between mindfulness and
Yes.
meditation?
They are related and very different practices. I like to consider meditation to be a formal practice. Meditation is something you can add to your to do list. It is, think of it like going to the gym. Okay.
Hmm.
It is a formal practice. The way that I define meditation is pretty simple because many people, and I invite for those of you listening right now, just think for a second. When I hear the word meditation, what comes up for me? Even when I taught this to 3-year-olds, and I would ask, even 3-year-olds would get into a position of like a lotus position, cross-legged, their hands in a particular like mudra looking, thumbs to fingertips. Even 3-year-olds knew from whatever cartoons they were watching, meditation looked a certain way. So we
Right.
all have a vision in our mind of what it looks like, a oftentimes misconception, preconception, judgment, misunderstanding. We all have some thought about what meditation is. So I like to debunk a lot of that because it prevents us from beginning a practice and it gets in the way of harnessing what we can gain from a practice.
Hmm.
But I'll go back to that in just a moment, but to quickly just name, meditation is a formal practice. It's something you actually do. Mindfulness is an informal practice. So it's not something you add to your to-do list. You can't put on your calendar, be mindful. Mindfulness, what I like to say is it's added to your to be list. Who do I want to be in the world? How do I want to show up? What is the quality of presence I want to bring to each moment, to my thoughts, to my emotions, to the sensations in my body, to the people around me, to my relationships, to my work? So mindfulness is an informal practice where you're taking what you've gained on the cushion in your meditation practice and you're taking it off the cushion and into your everyday life. So if meditation is like going to the gym, mindfulness is having strong muscles that serves you in all areas of your life. Now, I can't sit here, Jane, and be like, I really want stronger abs. And I can't just sit here and conceptually think about doing sit-ups or doing exercises to strengthen my abs. I would have to physically actually go do something to have stronger abs. So if I want to be mindful, I can't just sit here and think about the ways I can be more present. I have to train my mind and my body to do something a different way than how it's always been done. So if we look at meditation and mindfulness as those different, kind of categories, informal practice versus formal practice being the meditation, like going to the gym, doing something different, because meditation is literally like building a muscle for the brain. That's all we're doing.
Training ground.
That's all we're doing. I recently have also begun to really name that meditation is also regulating the nervous system. I can do that anywhere. So if I am, one of the ways that I define meditation is creating the space for stillness and silence to allow whatever's arising to exist, thoughts, emotions, sensations in the body, distraction. So I'm just creating the space for stillness and silence, allowing whatever's arising to exist and observing it, while simultaneously coming back to some focus of attention. So there's these two parts. It's what's called open monitoring, which is allowing whatever's arising to exist and observing it, and focused attention. So when our mind starts to wander up, we have some object of attention to bring it back to strengthen the muscle of our brain for focus and attention. Generally in meditation, that's the breath.
Yeah.
It regulates the nervous system. It has all these huge benefits. But for some people, the breath may not be in service to them to focus on. If you have respiratory issues, if you had trauma, physical trauma, sexual trauma, going internally to the body is not a safe place. So we can have plenty of objects of attention. We can, touch our fingertips to our thumb, and we can wiggle our toes and feel our feet on the ground. My favorite spiritual teacher says, light a candle.
Yeah.
Stare at a flame. It's hard to let your mind wander off when you're focusing on a flame, or think about looking at a horizon where the sky meets the ocean. Some object to place our attention, so when our mind naturally wanders off, we have it somewhere to bring back to.
Right.
I love to guide a meditation in sound, of having people close their eyes if they wish, tune into a sound they hear in their environment in the foreground. Maybe it's the air conditioning or the heater or an airplane or a car passing by, some obvious sound in their environment. Hold it in your mind's attention, and then shift to a background sound, maybe a bird chirping, maybe, a dog barking in the distance. I live in an area that at night I hear owls in the background if I really tune in. And then practice switching your attention from the foreground sound to the background sound. That is strengthening your mind to have focus and attention on where you choose.
I love it.
When we can create this space in meditation, we have now built the foundation to harness our own awareness and our abilities to apply that to all these different areas. And so mindfulness gives us the ability to respond and not react, to have the awareness of, am I even present? Because right now, anyone who's listening could be hearing my voice, but their mind is 4 hours ahead of what they're making for dinner, or an argument they had with their spouse or their kid this morning, and they're not even here.
Right.
So, when we can build that foundation during meditation, we're increasing our awareness of what's arising. We're increasing the ability to allow and accept what's here, even and especially when we don't like it. We're harnessing the ability to notice judgment and choose compassion instead, because I believe compassion is the opposite of judgment. we're having the ability, because of tuning into our breath and regulating that nervous system, to respond and not react. And when we are less reactive and we pause and we're aware of, oh, okay, I'm feeling this tension bubbling in my body because I'm aware of these sensations. And I know that that means I'm angry. And without awareness, my habitual reaction would be to yell at somebody. But if I have the awareness of what's arising and I take a deep breath and I interrupt the pattern and I pause and I come back to my intention, even if I start yelling, I can still pause halfway through my sentence and redirect and come back into my intention.
Mm-hmm.
So the typical definition you hear about mindfulness from Jon Kabat-Zinn is paying attention in the present moment on purpose without judgment, right? It's those components. And I find that definition a little bit tricky, the without judgment piece, because I don't know
Yeah.
about anyone listening, but we're all human. We have judgments. So if I'm supposed to be paying attention on purpose in the present moment, but I have a judgment, does that mean I'm not mindful? No, it means you're human. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a matter of noticing the judgments and choosing with intention and consciously not to act on them, or maybe to act on them in a different way. So I like to actually define mindfulness in 3 words: awareness, attention, and intention. So what are we wanting to be aware of? Aware of what's happening right now in this moment. Thoughts, emotion, sensation, right? Internal awarenesses and external awarenesses. Paying attention. So what do we want to pay attention to? Well, whatever's arising is going to trigger some habit, some pattern, some reaction, some mindset. That's
Mm-hmm.
how we're wired. But if we're paying attention of what those are, we then can come to the third part, which is intention, to be able to respond and not react, coming from a place of our values, coming from a place of alignment. If I were conscious and aware, how would I choose to respond to this trigger right now versus my habitual snap back at somebody, eat the bag of chips, right? Stay with my loud inner critic, deny, dismiss, ignore what's happened because I don't like it, right? So all of this is building a foundation for allowing ourselves the possibility of moving through our world in a more conscious and intentional way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the 3 words, just to remind us again, were
Awareness,
awareness, attention,
attention,
intention.
intention.
Yeah, beautiful. You mentioned that you trained under John Kabat-Zinn, and again, coming back to our audience and people that are in pain, the mindfulness-based stress reduction has been studied, and there's like, it's amazing when I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head now, but the people have had pain reduction, significant pain reduction from practicing mindfulness-based stress reduction. So when we talk about mindfulness-based stress reduction, what does that mean exactly? Is that sort
It
of
is
being mindful?
learning, it, it is relating differently to whatever's arising. Because if we normally, I mean, this is where Jon Kabat-Zinn, so he started MBSR in 1979 back at the University of Massachusetts, and he was a biology professor who was a lifelong practitioner of meditation. So he was really responsible for bridging these Eastern philosophies into Western medicine. And in doing so, in guiding the people through meditation and teaching them the skills of mindfulness, what we were learning to do is relate in a new way to the pain, to
Yes.
label it as sensation, not pain. And
Mhm.
if I normally feel pain, or if I normally feel sensation that I instantly label as pain, my mind is going to go into a schema of what do I do when I'm in pain? I pop a pill, I get angry about it, I externalize the blame of where it came from, I deny, dismiss, and ignore it, which is going to create different levels of pain somewhere else. If I can learn to accept what's here and learn to relate differently in a way that is less emotionally and mentally and spiritually charged,
Yes.
and ease and breathe my way through the discomfort, I now have a new relationship to the pain. And as I build that new relationship, I recognize the pain doesn't have power over me. I was giving the pain power over me. It's just like with our thoughts. People in meditation assume, one of the assumptions many people make is a quote, good meditation is one in which I have a clear mind. Never going to happen. Your mind produces thousands of thoughts each day.
Yeah.
The key of a good meditation is not to have the thoughts ever stop. They'll stop when you're dead. However, when you build the muscle towards awareness of the thoughts, the difference is as a thought arises, you don't have to instantly jump on board with it. You can just observe the thought, create some space, shift your relationship to the thought. You can still have a gazillion thoughts that come in. The difference is you are able to respond to them versus be in reaction to them. So
Mm,
if we can do that about thoughts, we can do that about pain. It's no
right.
different. It's
Exactly.
I want to do a TED Talk one day, Jane. I will do a TED Talk one day. And the title of the TED Talk that I want to do is, it's not about the thing, it's about how you relate to the thing.
So true.
Because whether I have a very quick funny story I'm going to share about what,
Okay.
how this came up for me one day. I was early on in my practice and I had created the space to meditate in my home office early in the morning. I was still married at the time. And my ex-husband still has all these years later, he does not believe in laptop computers. He has like the big tower, right? The big CPU that sits on the floor that he never turned off. So I was sitting meditating one morning and the sound of the fan on his computer started getting loud. And I'm trying to sit in the stillness and silence and try to like be in my peaceful Zen morning, right? And the sound of his computer started getting louder and louder. And the more louder it got, the more pissed I got. How dare this computer ruin my meditation? As if it was like doing it on purpose to piss me off. I let it take over. I got like, my blood started to, like, the computer was just doing what the computer was doing. How I was relating to it was adding to my own suffering.
Exactly. Yeah.
I got so worked up about this stupid computer fan. And then the funniest thing happened ever. It went completely silent in the room. And I thought, oh my God, look at that. I am so powerful. I actually, with my anger, turned off his damn computer. And I had this like brief, beautiful, blissful moment of silence. And then every single sound in my house went on. The computer, the like the cable box, my microwave, the oven, because in that moment, the power had gone out. And now all the sounds were coming back on at once. And then I sat there humbled and laughing. Thank you, universe, for reminding me I'm not that powerful and to like calm down about the sounds. They're just
Hmm.
sounds. How I was relating to it was working me up. And so when we recognize things are just things, how I'm relating to it impacts my experience of it. And if
Hmm.
I can relate differently to the sound, I can relate differently to a person who's triggering me. There's no difference. The habit is the same. If I can relate differently to a thought, I can relate differently to my pain. So
Right.
it's not
Not
about the
attach
thing, it's how
meaning.
you relate. It's how you relate to it that impacts your experience of it. So if we can do it in one area, we can do it in another because the habit is the same. But we are in a habit of getting reactive, over personalizing, wanting to find cause and blame for things that may not have cause and blame. And even if they do, we don't always want to do the thing to make it better. And
Hmm.
so when we recognize, mindfulness is rooted in a practice to alleviate our own suffering. And there's many ways that we add to our suffering. One of the quickest paths to suffering is expectation. Well,
Yeah.
what does that look like? Oh, it wasn't supposed to be like this. That's who? That's the story I created in my mind that played out how my life was supposed to look. Okay, well, it's what's here right now. So the story in your mind was just a story. The more attached you got to that story and you believed it to be true, and now that it just was life unfolding, but you're like, but that's not my story I wrote. Well, let's see how we can pivot from our expectation to what's actually here, shift our relationship to what's arising. Because the more I attach to how I wanted it to be, my ego has been like, grasping and clinging to it, the more suffering I cause myself. The more I can honor and acknowledge, okay, look what's arising. It's what's here. I don't like it. This is hard. But the more I'm in resistance to it, the harder it becomes. So the
Hmm.
key in being mindful is how can I allow and accept what's arising in this present moment? And people always say to me, but Joree, how do I allow and accept what's here when I don't like it? Well, not liking it doesn't make it go away. It only makes your reaction to it bigger. So how's that working for you?
Yes. Yes.
Right?
What would you say to someone, people that have like an illness or pain and they're like feeling like, but it is bad. Like, how would you tell them to reframe it?
We're not here to deny that it's bad. I would invite people to get curious around what's the story I'm telling myself about it? How loud is my inner critic? Am I looking for someone to blame? Am I judging myself? Am I externalizing and looking at an unjust world? Right. So look at where my judgments and inner critic, and how can I shift that to compassion? Because again, compassion is the antidote to judgment. And so how might my body respond differently if I quieted that inner critic and I turned down the dial on my judgments and I stopped looking for why is this happening? Why is another form of resistance. If we're in resistance, we're out of acceptance. Sometimes it just is, right? So I'm not denying that it's bad. I'm not here to deny, resist, or ignore that it's bad. It's an and, not but, and allows both to be true. And now that it's here, how can I relate to it in a way that serves me? Because the more I'm angry at it, I'm actually activating my nervous system to react to it.
Yeah.
I'm increasing my stress, which is going to increase my inflammation, which is going to increase the pain. And we
So
know
true.
enough to know that our mindset is so powerful to change us on a cellular level.
Yeah.
Can I share a quick study? And I don't know if you know this study, but it was done by a woman named Aaliyah Crum in the early 90s. And it's a study on mindset. And it was the subjects of the study were overweight hotel maids. They divided them, I mean, very specific group. They divided them into a test and control group. To the test group, well, they first were told, don't change anything in your diet over the next, whatever it was, 8 weeks. And these women all said they don't have time to exercise. Okay, test and control group. The test group was given a short little speech that, just so you know, every time you vacuum, you're burning X number of calories. Every time you change the linens, every time you dust, every time you push the cart down the hallway, you're burning calories. So at the end of the day, add up how many calories you burned. And there was some poster in their little break room that just reminded them of the fact that what they were already doing was good for them.
Mm-hmm.
They were told to do nothing else other than what they already had done. Those in the test group who believed that what they were doing was good for them and counted as exercise, by the end of the study, had lost weight and body fat.
Amazing. And
So
what
the
about the other
fact
group?
that nothing changed.
Right. The
So
mind is
when
so
we,
powerful.
it is so powerful. When we believe that something is bad, we're going to make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
When we believe something is better for us, we actually can heal ourselves. And then there's studies done on the telomeres, which are the end of the strands of the DNA, which are the what stops reproducing that causes the onset of aging and disease span. Well, studies have been done. There's a great book by anyone who wants to learn more about this. A very easy to read book that came out a few years ago called The Telomere Effect
Yep.
by Alyssa Epple. And what was in that book was the idea that these tools, these practices, mindfulness and meditation, it used to be believed that the telomeres only went unidirectionally. They only shortened over our lifespan, which means we had the onset of aging and disease anywhere between 50 and 80 years old. Of course, biosocial factors are going to contribute. And mindfulness and meditation lengthens the telomeres, which means we are literally changing our bodies on a cellular level for health by practicing these tools. Like, it's amazing. So it's not
Aging,
just our mindset.
aging
It's right. It's not
backwards.
just, yes, it's not just our mindset. It's not just our emotional response. It's not just our relationships to our thoughts. Like, we literally can change our cellular levels of our bodies.
Yeah, I know it. I know it. Joree, this has been really amazing, and so insightful, I think, for people to really see that they can use meditation, mindfulness, right, as tools to help change their bodies at a cellular level, to help lower pain, to help increase health. So, what a gift you've given people today. Um,
Thank
uh,
you.
I've always got one last question. I know we're running low on time now. One last question that I ask all my guests, and that is, it's all about intentional living. It's wellness by design. So, what would you recommend would be one intentional thing, a small thing that someone could do today that's going to initiate healing in their body?
You know, Jane, it is the most simple thing in the world. All you have to do is remember to do it. If I always tell my clients, if you do nothing else, take a moment and just breathe.
Mm.
If we can take a moment and just breathe, and we're going to regulate our nervous system, calm down the emotional brain, get our executive functioning back online, allow ourselves for a moment of pause so we can respond and not react, that can be almost enough to interrupt the habitual patterns, the autopilot, the reactivity, to help us shift back into intentional living. It is the simplest thing to do, the hardest thing to remember to do.
How do you
And
tell
it's
people to
almost
remember
enough.
to do it? How do they remember to do
I
it?
actually, I actually will tell people to put a reminder in their phone to pop up that says, take a minute and just breathe.
Love it.
Every time you get a text, it's not mission impossible. It's not going to go away if you don't read it immediately. If you hear a sound, your text or your email, let that be a cue to pause and take a moment to breathe. When you get to a red light or a stoplight, actually slow down and pause and take a moment to just breathe. I like to invite people to do it at transition moments, getting out of your bed, brushing your teeth, sitting down at the table before you open your email. Like any transition moment is an opportunity to get yourself super present with where you are.
Love it. I love how you
It's a
tied it into
practice.
a cue there, right? That's how you can train a new habit is you need to have a cue to do it. So beautiful. Thank you. Where's the best place for people to find you, Joree? Online.
Yes, joreerose.com is my website, JoreeRose.com. Follow me on Instagram. I post almost daily. So those two places, my website will give you links everywhere to my podcast, the free resources. That would probably be the easiest one-stop shop.
Perfect. And we'll have all those links in the show notes.
Thank you.
This has been really great. I thank you so much for the work that you've done, that the bravery that you had to step out of the safety and security that you were in and really embark on this journey, and now sharing it with other people. It's a beautiful gift to the world. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much for having me, Jane. Such a pleasure to connect with you and your audience.
And thank you. And to all the people that are listening or watching, uh, what did you learn? What's your takeaway from today? Do that one thing that Joree suggested. And, when you make these little baby steps, you can change your life. All right. Thanks so much
Yes.
for joining us today. Share this with someone who needs it. Have a great day.